The trust account reconciliation report showed a discrepancy of exactly $847,293.42, and I'd been staring at the same line item for 27 minutes. My name is Quinton Cambridge, 41 years old, senior counsel specializing in corporate litigation at one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms. I'd built my reputation on precision, every brief meticulously crafted, every motion strategically timed, every client dollar accounted for down to the penny, which made the numbers on my screen particularly unsettling. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. The 42nd floor was empty except for the security guard making his rounds and the hum of servers processing overnight case management updates. I'd stayed late to review quarterly trust account statements before tomorrow's partnership meeting, a routine task that usually took 30 minutes. The pooled interest allocation showed systematic transfers dating back 18 months. Small amounts initially, 500 here, 800 there. Then larger sums as recently as last week. Each transaction bore proper authorization codes and digital signatures, but the destination accounts were unfamiliar. I pulled up the firm's client trust management system and cross-referenced the transfer authorizations. Every single one traced back to our security clearance consultant, Kenneth Kaufman. He'd joined the firm 2 years ago with impeccable credentials, former federal investigator, specialized in attorney background verification and client security protocols. The partners had hired him specifically to handle sensitive government contract work and high-profile client vetting. Kenneth had access to everything: client files, financial records, case management systems. His security clearance opened doors that remained locked to most associates. The partners trusted him completely. I scrolled through months of transaction logs, watching the pattern emerge. The transfers always occurred during major case settlements when large sums moved through our pooled accounts. Kenneth would reallocate interest earnings, money that should have been distributed to clients or retained by the firm, into accounts I couldn't identify. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Working late again, Quinton? Some discoveries are better left buried." The message disappeared from my screen before I could screenshot it. I looked around the empty office, suddenly aware of every shadow and sound. The elevator chimed softly in the distance. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, growing closer. The footsteps belonged to Kenneth Kaufman himself. He appeared in my doorway at 11:47 p.m., coffee cup in hand, looking as composed as ever. His silver hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour, and his navy suit showed no wrinkles from what should have been a long day. "Quinton, burning the midnight oil again." His voice carried that familiar warmth that had made him so popular with the partners. "I saw your office light from the parking garage." I minimized the trust account screen and turned to face him. "Just reviewing quarterly reports. You know how it is." Kenneth stepped into my office and closed the door behind him. The gesture felt deliberate. "Mind if I sit? I've been meaning to talk with you about the Morrison Industries case. Your work on their government contracts has been exceptional." 2 years earlier, Kenneth had arrived at our firm with a resume that impressed even the most skeptical partners. 23 years with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, specializing in financial crimes and security clearance investigations. He'd transitioned to private consulting, helping law firms navigate the complex world of government contract work and client background verification. The partners had been struggling with a series of high-profile cases involving defense contractors and federal agencies. They needed someone who understood both the legal requirements and the security protocols. Kenneth had been their salvation. He'd guided me through my first major government contract case, explaining the intricate web of clearance requirements and compliance standards. They shielded me from internal politics while I learned the ropes. Kenneth became my mentor, teaching me how to handle classified documents and navigate federal procurement regulations. "The Morrison case is progressing well," I said carefully. "Their compliance audit should be complete next week." Kenneth nodded and sipped his coffee. "Excellent. I've been reviewing their financial structures, and there are some interesting trust arrangements we should discuss. Complex, pooled accounts, multiple beneficiaries, the kind of setup that requires careful oversight. I felt a chill run down my spine. Was he testing me? Did he know what I'd discovered? Kenneth, I've been looking at our own trust account management. Some of the interest allocations seem unusual. His expression didn't change, but I caught a slight tightening around his eyes. Oh, what kind of irregularities? I pulled up a different screen, showing legitimate client account summaries. Nothing major. Just want to make sure our procedures are bulletproof before the partnership meeting tomorrow. Smart thinking. The partners appreciate thoroughness. Kenneth stood and walked to my window, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. You know, Quinton, trust is the foundation of everything we do here. Clients trust us with their most sensitive matters. Partners trust each other with firm resources. That trust, once broken, can never be fully restored. The words felt like a warning. After Kenneth left, I waited 20 minutes before accessing the trust account system again. This time, I printed everything. Transaction logs, authorization codes, account routing numbers. I also pulled Kenneth's personnel file from the HR database. His background check had been conducted by an outside firm, standard procedure for someone with his security clearance. But as I dug deeper, I found something troubling. The verification company that had vetted Kenneth's credentials had been dissolved 6 months after his hiring. Their records were gone. I spent the next 3 hours building a timeline. Kenneth's first unauthorized transfer had occurred exactly 2 weeks after the Morrison Industries retainer hit our pooled account. The pattern was clear. He waited for large settlements or retainers, then skimmed interest earnings during the processing period. The amounts were staggering. Over 18 months, Kenneth had diverted $847,000 in client trust interest. Money that should have been distributed to clients or retained by the firm had vanished into accounts registered to shell companies in Delaware and Nevada. But the most damning came from the case management logs. Kenneth had accessed client files outside his authorized scope, downloading financial records and settlement agreements. He'd used his security clearance to bypass normal oversight protocols. At 3:15 a.m., I received another anonymous text. Some secrets are worth more than money. Stop digging. This time I was ready. I screenshotted the message and traced the number through our firm's investigative resources. It led to a burner phone purchased with cash in Newark 3 days ago. I gathered all my into encrypted files and uploaded them to a secure cloud server. Then I called Quinton Kaufman, our most trusted paralegal, and the only person I knew would be awake at this hour. She'd been with the firm for 15 years and had an encyclopedic knowledge of our procedures. Quinton, what's wrong? Her voice was alert despite the early hour. Clementine, I need your help with something sensitive. Can you meet me at the office in 2 hours? I'm already here. Been working on the Patterson discovery all night. What's going on? When Clementine arrived at my office, I showed her everything. The transaction logs, the unauthorized transfers, Kenneth's access violations. She studied this with the same methodical precision that made her invaluable during complex litigation. This is sophisticated, she said finally. He's been using legitimate authorization codes, probably harvested from other transactions. The timing suggests he has real-time access to our settlement processing system. How is that possible? His security clearance gives him administrative privileges on most of our systems. The partners set it up that way so he could conduct thorough background investigations. Clementine pulled up Kenneth's access logs. Look at this. He's been logging in during off hours, always when major transactions are processing. We spent the next hour documenting everything. The was overwhelming. Kenneth Kaufman had systematically stolen nearly $1 million from client trust accounts over 18 months. He'd used his position of trust and his security clearance to bypass every safeguard the firm had in place. As dawn broke over Manhattan, I made the hardest decision of my career. I called the senior partner's emergency line and requested an immediate meeting. The betrayal was complete, the irrefutable. But as I prepared to expose Kenneth's crimes, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The emergency partners meeting convened at 7 a.m. in the firm's mahogany-paneled conference room. I sat across from 3 senior partners, my files spread between us like accusations waiting to be voiced. The morning light cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. "These are serious allegations, Quinton," said the managing partner, reviewing my documentation. "You're certain about the authenticity of these transaction logs?" "Completely certain. Kenneth has been systematically diverting interest from our pooled trust accounts. The pattern spans 18 months and totals $947,000. The room fell silent except for the rustle of papers. Each partner studied with the careful attention they'd give to a Supreme Court brief. The unauthorized access logs, the timing correlations, the digital fingerprints. Everything pointed to Kenneth Kaufman. "We need to involve the Office of Judicial and Legal Review immediately," the managing partner decided. "This level of trust account violation requires formal investigation." Within hours, Ethics Enforcement Director Kevin Brown arrived with 2 investigators. They commandeered our largest conference room and began interviewing every attorney who'd worked with Kenneth. The firm's normal operations ground to a halt as partners huddled in worried conversations and associates whispered in hallways. Kenneth arrived for work at his usual 9:30, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. I watched from my office window as Kevin Brown and his team intercepted him at the elevator bank. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes before Kenneth was escorted to the conference room. The interrogation continued for 6 hours. Through the glass walls, I could see Kenneth's confident posture gradually deteriorate. His expensive suit seemed to shrink around him as they mounted. By 3 p.m., his attorney had arrived, a criminal defense specialist from a competing firm. "Mr. Cambridge," Kevin Brown called me into the conference room at 4:15. "We need your testimony regarding the discovery of these irregularities." I recounted everything: the late-night billing alert, the pattern recognition, the systematic investigation with Clementine's help. Kenneth sat motionless throughout my testimony, his face a mask of professional composure that couldn't quite hide the defeat in his eyes. "The is conclusive," Kevin Brown announced to the assembled partners at 5 p.m. "Mr. Kaufman has admitted to unauthorized access and misappropriation of client trust funds. The total amount exceeds $900,000. The confession hit the room like a physical blow. Partners who'd trusted Kenneth with their most sensitive cases, who'd relied on his security expertise, sat in stunned silence. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal. Kenneth's security clearance was immediately revoked. His access to all firm systems was terminated. By 6 p.m., building security was escorting him from the premises with a single cardboard box containing his personal effects. 15 years of trust and professional reputation destroyed in a single afternoon. The legal consequences unfolded rapidly. The state bar filed formal disciplinary charges within 48 hours. Kenneth faced immediate suspension pending a full ethics hearing. Criminal charges for embezzlement and computer fraud followed within the week. Our clients had to be notified. The firm faced potential malpractice claims and regulatory scrutiny. Insurance companies launched their own investigations. The prestigious reputation we'd built over decades hung in the balance because one man had exploited our trust, but the firm's response was swift and decisive. Full restitution was made to all affected client accounts within 72 hours. An independent audit was commissioned to review every transaction Kenneth had touched. New security protocols were implemented to prevent future breaches. Clementine proved invaluable during the crisis. Her detailed knowledge of our procedures helped investigators trace every unauthorized transaction. Her testimony provided crucial for both the bar disciplinary hearing and the criminal prosecution. "You saved the firm," the managing partner told me during a private meeting. "Your attention to detail and quick action prevented this from becoming a complete disaster." The bar hearing took place 6 weeks later. Kenneth appeared with his attorney, a shadow of his former confident self. The pucka was overwhelming. Detailed transaction logs, security footage, digital forensics, and his own confession. The disciplinary panel deliberated for less than an hour. Kenneth Kaufman was disbarred permanently. His law license was revoked with no possibility of reinstatement. The criminal trial followed 3 months later, resulting in a conviction for embezzlement and computer fraud. He received a 4-year prison sentence and was ordered to pay full restitution plus penalties. The firm survived, but the scars remained. Trust, once broken, required time and effort to rebuild. New security measures were implemented. Background checks were enhanced. The easy access Kenneth had enjoyed was replaced with multi-layered authorization protocols. I found myself helping other attorneys who'd been victimized by similar schemes. My experience with digital forensics and trust account investigations became valuable expertise. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed my faith in the profession had transformed me into an advocate for financial transparency. The final piece of justice came when Kenneth's assets were seized to satisfy the restitution order. His Manhattan apartment, his investment portfolio, even his expensive watch collection, everything was liquidated to repay the stolen funds. The man who'd lived lavishly on client money was left with nothing. As winter settled over Manhattan, the firm began to heal. New protocols were working. Client confidence was slowly returning. The partnership had survived its greatest test, stronger and more vigilant than before. But I knew I couldn't stay. The betrayal had changed something fundamental in my relationship with the firm. Trust, once shattered, leaves invisible cracks that never fully disappear. 6 months later, I stood in my new office overlooking Central Park. The nameplate on my door read Quinton Cambridge Partner, at a boutique firm specializing in legal ethics and professional responsibility. The irony wasn't lost on me. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed my career had led me to my true calling. My phone buzzed with another referral. A solo practitioner in Brooklyn suspected his office manager of skimming retainer fees. The patterns were familiar. Unexplained discrepancies, altered timestamps, missing transaction records. I'd seen it all before. The Kenneth Kaufman case had become a cautionary tale in legal circles. Bar associations used it in continuing education seminars. Law schools included it in their ethics curricula. The man who'd stolen nearly $2 million had inadvertently created a blueprint for prevention. My new practice thrived on referrals from attorneys who'd heard about my work. Trust account investigations, digital forensics, internal audits, services that most lawyers never knew they needed until it was too late. I help expose billing abuses in client advocacy groups, working with organizations that protect vulnerable clients from financial exploitation. The old firm sent me a holiday card last December. Business was good. The new security protocols were working. Kenneth's replacement, a former federal investigator named Quinton Cambridge, had implemented systems that made another betrayal nearly impossible. Multiple authorization levels, real-time monitoring, automated alerts. Technology had become their shield against human weakness. I still thought about Kenneth sometimes. Prison records showed he was serving his sentence at a minimum security facility upstate. His appeals had been denied. His law license remained permanently revoked. The man who'd once commanded respect in Manhattan legal circles was now inmate number 47,291. The stolen money had been fully recovered and returned to clients. The firm's malpractice insurance had covered additional damages. But the real cost couldn't be measured in dollars. It was the erosion of trust, the questioning of every relationship, the paranoia that followed betrayal. My new partners understood my background. They'd hired me precisely because of my experience with financial fraud. Our firm's motto, displayed prominently in the lobby, read, "Vigilance through transparency." Every client knew our story. Every case file was triple audited. Every trust account transaction was monitored in real time. The sunset painted Manhattan's skyline in shades of amber and gold. Traffic moved slowly along Fifth Avenue below. Somewhere in that maze of steel and glass, other attorneys were discovering their own betrayals. Other partnerships were fracturing under the weight of broken trust. Other careers were hanging in the balance. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt genuinely at peace. The nightmares had stopped. The constant checking of account balances had ended. The hypervigilance that had consumed me was finally fading into healthy caution. My assistant knocked and entered with the day's final reports. All accounts balanced, all transactions verified, all systems secure. She smiled and wished me good night, locking the office door behind her. I gathered my briefcase and headed for the elevator. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new challenges, new opportunities to protect attorneys from the kind of betrayal I'd survived. The work was meaningful in ways I'd never expected. The lobby was quiet, except for the soft hum of security cameras and motion sensors. Outside, Manhattan's evening rush was beginning. Yellow cabs honked through intersections. Pedestrians hurried toward subway stations. The city's relentless energy continued, indifferent to individual struggles and triumphs. I walked toward the subway, my reflection catching in storefront windows. The man looking back was older, more cautious, but somehow more complete. The betrayal had stripped away illusions about human nature, but it had also revealed reserves of strength I'd never known I possessed. The train arrived on schedule. I found a seat and opened my tablet to review tomorrow's case files. 3 new investigations, 2 expert witness assignments, and a speaking engagement at the New York State Bar Association. The calendar was full, the work was important, and the future felt secure. As the train pulled away from the station, I closed my eyes and let the rhythmic clacking of wheels on tracks wash over me. The city blurred past the windows. The day was ending. The long journey from victim to advocate was complete. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.